All people are
when you obey God's word
that was built by slaves, and I watch my daughters.
There is nobody that respects women more than I do.
there is a lot of crisis, a lot of bad this.
Hey everybody, Michael Gungor here. I've got with me in the studio today my lovely partner, Lisa.
Hello.
Lisa or Isa? Can I call you Isa on this podcast?
You can totally call me Isa.
I want to call you Isa. I like Isa.
I like it too.
It's nice.
I like that one. I've got a few friends calling me that right now. I kind of like it. They said I don't look like a Lisa. I don't know what a Lisa should look like. But
I don't want to insult any other Lisas out there.
I know. So maybe we shouldn't. But Lisa.
And I guess I shouldn't want to insult the Lisa in here either.
But who is Lisa, really?
Wait, so first I should say, this podcast is not searchable on iTunes.
That's a problem.
It's a problem. And even if you search for my name, this podcast does not show up. This has been brought to my attention. So I have to change the name of the podcast. So it's going to be called Loving This. I think that's nice.
I like that. I like it a lot.
Isa's the one who you came up, or I had a list for you, and that's the one you liked.
It is.
So thank you, Isa. And if you don't like it, you can send your complaints to Isa Gungor
at idon'tgiveadamn.com.
Okay, so for today's episode, we still had a lot more questions from the online questions that were asked. And rather than me just trying to read randomly, I thought it'd be fun for Isa to come in here and ask whatever she wants of these questions, and we can make it a little conversation.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you.
Oh,
darling partner.
You're welcome. Okay, well, I haven't been on this podcast before.
No.
And I just have to tell you, husband, I love your book. I love your stuff. I think it's great. But I love it. I love this.
But the southern accent when you said it, why?
I don't know. It was probably a sense of a slight. I wanted it to sound a little funny instead of super sincere, and I don't know why I felt that. But it's okay. Both are okay. And I also think it's funny. I just think that accent is funny. Anyone who has that accent, I love you. I think it's funny. Well, I think there's a certain element of we sleep together, and we did last night. It was great. So, giving compliments to the spouse, there's always a little bit of an element that it might sound, I don't know, cheesy. So I think that's why I did the voice. But I should just tell you, I love the book.
Oh, thank you. And
I'm glad.
And the voice is funny.
It is funny. I think I do it rather well. Oh my God. Okay, I'm going to jump right in here. So I didn't know which...
I don't know if it was that good. Was it real consistent in its location?
No. This isn't consistent at all. I'm going to work on it. It's going to get better. It's...
I feel stoned.
You look stoned. But you always kind of look stoned.
I took that CBD oil. That's
Pete's?
Stuff
The one that Pete says to take?
Yeah, the Charlotte's Web.
Oh.
Maybe I'm going to advertise it on here because it's really fun.
You're going to give him a free...
I just feel real happy and real goofy. Charlotte's Web, keeping your work fun.
Keeping the work fun.
Maybe they have better slogans than that.
I just created a jingle for them for free. Keeping the work fun. Yeah.
You're welcome, Charlotte's Web.
You're welcome, Charlotte's Web.
And thank you, Isa.
You're welcome.
I hope they pay me lots of money.
I hope so, too. I hope so too. Oh. Okay. So there's I don't really know which question to start out with. But
I bet whatever one it is going to be the perfect one.
Oh, I see what you're doing. Oneness jokes. Oneness jokes.
Oneness jokes are some of our favorite jokes.
There's no way it couldn't be perfect. It happened. I'd like to start with one of my questions.
Oh. Just reading through all of them like,
Nah, these guys, I don't know. I'm gonna Emmett Francis.
All right,
wait.
I would love to hear your questions.
Okay. Well, and I say that because I think this question of mine actually covers a lot of people's questions. As I was reading through your Twitter, there was a lot.
Okay.
And
I'm also just curious about what your question is, even if it doesn't have to summarize those other questions.
Well, and I know these answer for this. So, I mean, we sleep together.
Yeah,
I know the answer.
You keep mentioning.
I just want everyone to know. Did you guys know? Did you guys know we sleep together and it's great? I keep saying that.
And it was last night. And it was so
I'm just
fun.
very happy.
charlottesweb.com. I don't know if that's the real place
Charlotte
to get
better be sending us some cash money. Okay. This is just a question that I hear a lot of people asking, even with a lot of our friends. I struggled with it a lot, and I know that you struggled with this. So it's about like reattaching. So it seems like when people see, like they see what is, they're aware of awareness, there's a strong tendency for the ego to continue building stories. There's like a reattachment happens.
Mm-hmm.
And they feel this like constriction. Mm-hmm. So like right after the moment of awareness, seeing, whatever you want to call it, waking up, it can feel really simple. It can feel overwhelming. You can feel high. You can feel whatever. But I so often felt, and I hear it from so many people, like it's like a coming down, and then they get confused again, and the thoughts start coming in, and so it can be really confusing. The ego wants to like solidify that it's here in the story. So what was really helpful for me was to talk to you a lot about how that oscillating felt. Mm-hmm. So we get to talk about this all the time, and I think other people might appreciate like how to know how that oscillation felt for you and what you've done to calm the thoughts and to not freak out and the constriction in your body. Like what do you do to calm the constricting?
Ooh, into the deep end of the pool.
And also, what's your favorite pizza? Second question.
I like the barbecue chicken pizza. It's pretty good.
Good. Okay.
Yeah, that's great. It's a great question. And I think what happens when our bodies begin to doubt, for those of us who have seen, if you've seen like, oh, I'm not Michael Gungor. Michael Gungor is this story. If you've seen that you are, or maybe you didn't have words for it, but a lot of people have these experiences where you feel one with everything, where you feel your sense of personal boundary, where you normally feel you're the person inside the skin and everything else is outside the skin. If you felt those kind of the oneness of all, then what happens is the body begins to kind of reacclimate to its conditioning. So the body has spent its entire life being conditioned that it's a separate organism. That helps it stay alive on some level, but it's constant conditioning. Hey, Michael, Hey, Michael, what's happening? Hey, Michael, don't do this. Michael, eat your vegetables. Michael, don't, like, since I was a kid. Michael, oh, good boy, Michael. The whole thing is this training to this body, and it's really conditioned to think of itself, even though it's a constantly changing pattern of movement, as a thing, as a somebody, as a Michael. And so then when some of that gets questioned, and in an experience, oneness is experienced, and immediately, that for a lot of us, the doubts start coming. And for me, it was like almost waves of frequency. Like at first, after I first really saw through the ego, I had mystical experiences where I felt one and everything, but where I really had a clarity of seeing through the ego as an illusion. And that was the mechanism by which all that separation was happening. That was in 2016. And then the oscillation, as far as like moving into experiences that really felt constrictive, and all of a sudden I'm Michael Gungor again, being really offended that the lady, you remember the first big one was this airplane ride. I was with you, and the lady told me I couldn't bring my guitar on.
Oh yeah, and I saw it starting to happen.
I was like, I'm Michael fucking Gungor.
It was so
This is
strange.
my
I felt
fucking
like
guitar.
I felt your old energy of that. I was like, oh, like another person has just entered the room that I used to know.
I'm back!
I'm back, baby.
But it's just old. It's like muscle memory. It's like,
Yeah.
there's some old songs we've joked around. The other night you and I were singing old worship songs. I mean, other night, I don't know when that was. But we were singing all these songs we haven't even thought of in so long. Some of those songs we sang I hadn't thought of in 20 years. But I still knew them. I still had them in my muscles and in my bones somewhere. They just kind of
It just arises. It just comes out.
Old memory, old muscle memory.
Yeah.
And so even, the mind can see through the illusion of ego and see through the illusion of separateness and be like, oh, I am. And that's it. There is no after I am that's real. That's anything other than a story. And you can see through that with your mind, but that doesn't mean that when you get cut off in traffic, that the acid doesn't start going crazy in your stomach.
And then loving that response too, even like, I mean, I remember if that acid went off and something, or like I yell at the person or I honk at them, and then I would immediately feel like I missed it. Like, a person that is aware doesn't respond that way. And I really had all these judgments for what I should, I should react. And like all of my reflexes would just disappear. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the work, I think, is learning to putting yes back into it. I like how Richard Rohr talks about that a lot. He talks about yes. And I think the no's just stacked on top of each other are what create that wheel, that cycle of suffering. So you see something that you don't want in this, you experience this as it is, and you say, no, I don't want that guy to say that thing about me on Twitter.
Yeah.
And then you notice, oh no, I'm getting bent out of shape about something that I shouldn't be. Oh no, look I'm caught in my thoughts. Oh no, I'm it just spins itself out of control. So yeah, throwing a yes in there, saying when at whatever point of the cycle you realize, oh, look at my ego doing what it's doing, trying to keep my body safe.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, body. I love you. Have been, I think, huge for me. I think huge for you too. And it makes me, that leads me to like something else we were talking about, that is also encompassed in some people's questions. But the other night, we were talking to your sister. I don't know if you've already mentioned this on this podcast, but I was talking to your sister, and we're friends with this actress, and she was like, your sister was like, I don't like knowing that you guys are all friends because that makes her character not real on the TV show. Mm-hmm. And then I'd equate that so resonated with him in me, because there was a time where I was like, oh no, it's a dream. The story's not real. And I really wanted to believe it's real. So like, I just wonder how many people, I don't wonder how many people, I find it interesting, the difference between people who can see, and there's this beautiful, oh, good, wow. And then someone else who's like, fuck, no, I am real. I wanted my character to be a real thing. And the actress on the TV show is such a good analogy to me. But what would you say to people who are feeling the, oh no, oh no, I really liked the story. I would have an answer for that, but I think it's really interesting. What's your answer?
I mean, I'd ask who's worried. Like, you're somebody saying, oh no, I like this story. Who's the I still that likes the story? Is it awareness itself? If it is, then there's no problem. Awareness gets to keep doing the story. If there's a problem to be found, it's because you've constricted your awareness to the story itself, to the ego, to that ball of fear, like Mason said. And when you bring your identity into that constriction, then it says, oh no, I feel like I love my story. It's like pretending that it's awareness. Mm-hmm. Thinking that the I is just the unquestioned all. But if you're thinking it, it's not. If you're thinking that there needs to be some sort of questions answered, and thinking that there's a problem by not knowing, or thinking that something needs to be, oh no, what happens if I lose my story? What will I become? Mm-hmm. That's only the ego thinking that shit. Yeah. And not even, that's the wrong way of saying it. It's the ego taking credits for those fearful, conditioned thoughts that are arising. Mm. So these thoughts arise from the body. Those have been conditioned. They just happen. And spontaneously arise. And then the ego, that ball of constricted muscle in the and thought in the human being, says, look at my thoughts, look at my doubts. And oh, I am afraid. And then it makes it worse. It's just like that clinging on to the cycle of suffering. And I think that's enough words for me to say.
And those are my words. The next one we've got is Ken Hendricks. He says, can you break down the parable of walking your dog in the rain? Could it be summed up as joining with our ego in suffering? Is it autobiographical? Going through the book a second time, I felt like I cued into some flavor of it, feeling like sin, quote, sin, in the first portion.
One thing jumped out, joining with your ego in suffering. And I would just point out, who is the one who's joining your ego? What sense of separateness can do something like that? That's not the ego. I don't know if that made sense, but with that, it's actually identifying as the ego that causes the suffering. So in the walking the dog parable, this guy feels like walking your dog in the rain is the worst thing possible. It's like why would anyone do that? It's fiscally irresponsible. It's
fiscally.
Yeah. So, like you can ruin your clothes, ruin your shoes. You gotta buy more dog shampoo.
This is so fiscally irresponsible.
It's a waste of your time too. It's a waste, it's not good. Really bad. And so then by the end you see he begins to doubt it when he sees a woman who walks her dog in the rain. And she's fine. They seem happy. And for the first time questioning his fundamental assumption. He never asked, like, why? It just was, how can I not walk my dog in the rain? What are the consequences of not walking my dog in the rain? What can I do to not walk my dog in the rain? He was all the way down in the assumption. When he backed up one step and said, why? It actually led him to one more question, which is even deeper than that. Who is this dog that I'm talking about? And he looks down and he doesn't even see a dog. And I think we always have this, we get lost in this deeper level question, like where you've already made the assumption. So like, we get, well, what does the Bible say about homosexuality? And we've made it as like a couple assumptions already, like that matters. That God wrote the Bible, and even in that God is correct.
I hope my mother's listening to this.
So what I'm saying is, like, you get to a point, you keep asking the questions, and I think the final question is who. So you've been thinking how and why, and you back up one step and you go, who's asking? Because if there's no who's asking, why are you asking? Like, it doesn't. It's the only reason you would ask if you think you're a who that needs an answer.
And it's been interesting, like, being on this side of it, as we talk to friends and talk to people. Like, we've had some, and I've felt that at times. Well, I'll feel like I get stuck in something, and we're talking about something. You'll say that. I know Fred Davis has asked me that a few times. Who's talking? And it feels frustrating, I think. Sometimes it can feel like, not every time I've experienced both perspectives on. I've had two experiences with hearing that question. One is, I'm frustrated at you. You know what I'm fucking talking about. And the other, so like the laugh. I think some people can experience a frustration and an anger, especially if they hear someone saying, who's talking? And then hearing laughter, like we're both laughing now. So I just thought about that. Like, I love being able to laugh about it now. But when you're oscillating quite frequently, that's really hard. And it can feel like a haha, fuck you question. Who's asking the question? You're like, well, me. It's me. I'm asking. What would you say to that frustration that people may feel? I mean, I know what you'd say.
What would I say?
Feel it. Love the frustration. Love what is arising. What else?
Yeah, I mean, what I felt was, it's one of the hard things about this, trying to talk about this stuff, is it is insulting to the ego. Not insulting. It is dangerous to the ego. And so confronting the ego can actually cause suffering for the ego to constrict more. That's a risk. That sucks. because why I'm here is to help ease suffering. That's why I'm at the end of this microphone right now. So yeah, it just makes me like, how can I love in ways that minimizes that response? Like, maybe that's why the people. Maybe I'm just an idiot for just putting this out on the internet. Somebody was telling me recently about. I think in the Ram Dass world or something, there's something that a lot of the followers talk about called the big teaching, and you don't really talk about the big teaching. And there's like questions about some teachers who just do, and that's basically it's this. This is the big teaching, that there is no you that needs to be taught anything, and it is like the least popular possible message.
Absolutely. Yeah, it really is.
And just throwing it out there is going to be received by so few people if it's said directly. And it can't be truly said directly, but it can get closer. So yeah, I don't know. I think Jesus was wise to try to put a lot of this into parables rather than saying it so clearly usually. He said it a few times, this is my body, this is my blood.
Yeah.
It's pretty literal. Mine being the Christ, the universe. But yeah, putting it into, like, let me tell you a story about a guy who walked down a road and needed help. Yeah.
But it's all, do what you want to do. Put this on the internet. Or don't. It's all...
I know.
It's all beautiful.
Feeling the natural, like, laughter at something and then not realizing how that laughter is experienced by so many different people. Even that is like there's like a sadness to that to me.
Oh, and I didn't... I know... But even in me saying that, like, there's a lot of people who experience the laughter too. I know. But that's all, that doesn't mean you don't laugh.
Oh, of course. I'm going to keep laughing.
Yeah. My eating something is causing...
Also feeling the sadness that...
Yeah.
That one person's laughter is another person's pain.
Yeah.
It's part of the beauty of it and part of the pain of it. Like, we couldn't have any of it without all of it.
Dave Barrington, he said, "Can you delve further into karma? I guess I'm stuck on the duality of the westernized version of it."
I'm not an expert in any, like, the original meanings of these words or anything. I'm not a scholar by any means. My understanding of karma, for what I've heard of the concept spoken by others and how I interpret it into my world, is basically how everything goes together. It's how the thing moves, the thing being all of it. And my journey, the things that this body will experience going through life, and whether this body becomes free or not in its experience of this, is not something that a little ego in the body is like driving the car and doing. So, like, there's karma is the action of all of it. And so my body just has its karma, its connection to everything else. It's connected to my dad's karma, to my partner's karma. Like, what they do affects not just them, but it affects me. And what I do doesn't just affect me, it affects all bodies. It all goes together. There's all this karma being created of, it's just basically movement. It's if I stick my finger into a whirlpool, it subtly affects the entire whirlpool. And when we create suffering for ourselves, we also create it for others. When we ease the suffering of ourselves, we also ease it for others. So karma, I don't see it as like, when I remember putting it into the dualistic framework of Western Christianity, evangelical Western Christianity, and in trying to understand it, it felt like, okay, God somewhere, so that other up there somewhere has like cursed people with bad, like if they did bad things, now they've got this kind of sinful black orb around them they've got to work off through time or something. It's not, it's more in that frame of a universe. I don't think it's that at all. Where like you have, oh no, I'm creating bad karma. Now I'm going to have to live another life as a sick person.
Yeah.
Or as a rat or whatever.
Yeah. And also, I mean, you'd said just a minute ago, like, are you going to create more suffering or ease suffering? I think what I've found also is that even when you ease someone's suffering, that creates suffering for someone else. Or the potential. You choosing to be free has caused other people suffering. Or the woman who leaves her religion for freedom causes her family suffering. Whatever. I mean, it's just the whole cycle of it.
Yeah. I mean, to be as clean as possible with the language, which you can't be totally clean with it. But like, I don't think you can, the way I'm using suffering in the book and usually on the podcast is, I don't think you can cause anybody suffering.
Yes. Yeah.
You can cause people pain.
Yeah.
It's a dangerous thing to say, though, because
it's dangerous.
Because you could really, really easily abuse that.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not causing their suffering; it's their problem.
Yeah.
But I don't think somebody. I think more people would be likely to hear something like, when your suffering is eased, someone else's suffering is increased, then you're causing them suffering. It actually kind of like would easily stir somebody to grab on to fear or confusion or trying to figure it.
Yeah.
Rather than like, you don't need to worry about it. You can't do anything.
Yeah. Well, and this feels like a great lead into Holly's question, which I think is really, you and I have talked about a lot. When you talk about things that are held in your body when it comes to trauma. So her question is, when it comes to suffering related to trauma from abuse, to eliminate the suffering seems like a discrediting of personal experience, which feels like a dissociative PTSD response. What is a healthy approach to suffering, quote, stories in trauma-related issues?
That's a good question. Mm-hmm. What do you think?
You know, I mean, I've thought about this a lot because I think as similar as our stories have been, there's a lot of similarity and there's so much that's not similar. And so childhood trauma that I experienced, you know, as you know, they don't know this, but they're, just this year, I'm learning how to release that in my body. And I think it created a lot of suffering I was experiencing a lot of suffering. I was experiencing pain because for the first time in my life, I was letting or finding the places in my body and my brain that was holding on to those traumas and learning how to release it. But I think I was frustrated because I thought, oh, I'm only identifying with my story. And I kind of thought once I'm aware, that I wouldn't be triggered. I wouldn't, like we talked about earlier, I wouldn't have those reflexes. And so I think the work of the body and people who've experienced trauma is really important. And I don't think this conversation invalidates the work that needs to be done in the body. But I understand what she's saying. Like, it could create this dissociative feeling. But what I found is the more I've gone into my body and go and love the places that hold the trauma and the work that I've been doing in the body, it has led me to a bigger release. And those are the times I feel less attached. But yeah, and for people who are experiencing trauma or who have experienced trauma, I'd say this is not the book for trauma.
Yeah, it's not.
This is it's a lot like you're going underneath all the stories. But I think it's really vital and beautiful for it. But if you're struggling with that, my advice would be see a trauma therapist, read some good books that there's a bunch of different books that Hillary McBride suggests, but really having a therapist on your side to help you walk through those things is super important.
Yeah. This is getting under the stories, like Lisa said. And I think something like trauma and therapy and all the shadow work stuff, that's in the story realm. And it's totally necessary work especially in order to not cause other people pain and suffering. I think it's theoretically possible to have this total full of shadows and full of dangerous stories person who could stop suffering by seeing the meaninglessness of it all and by just letting go. But then that would be a really destructive person.
Yeah.
A really powerfully destructive person, because without any fear or concern for consequences, because what does it matter? There's nothing happening. That would be a dangerous, a dangerous person. So the story work of like making sure your body is paying attention to compassion and the love within itself, and the fear that comes from trauma, and like dealing with that in a way that allows the body to make healthier decisions and not just repress and run away from and attack, and like these extreme responses a lot of times that trauma can provide as the most helpful response. But yeah, I think you're right. And there's like a fundamental difference between this work. I don't think it's that people that have trauma shouldn't wake up, or that like if you have trauma, you shouldn't listen to this podcast. It's not that either. It's just they don't have anything to do with each other.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You're not discounting or telling people to like just dissociate from.
No, not at all.
That's not what's happening. It's not like it doesn't discredit the work the good work that needs to be done in the body to know the body's safe. What I've experienced is the more I've had the privilege of getting help and having a therapist who can help me get into the places in my body and my brain to help release the trauma. And a lot of that has been just done. It's just been personal work, like body meditations that I'm doing. But the more I do that, the more I'm able to zoom out and see, oh, there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong. It's all, and I've been able to see that every trauma moment was all, and again, I know that these things can be easily misunderstood when you say there's nothing wrong.
Yeah.
Because you go, there's all these things wrong in the world. Obviously, anyone listening to this podcast, I think, maybe understands that. But the more I let go of that, the more I was able to see how it was all love. Every moment, every trauma was all love, trying and totally unaware of the pain that it caused, but it was all love being.
Yeah. And what's so tricky about that to say is it's only can be spoken from a level back, a click back in the telescope, from micro to macro. And most of us don't live there. Mm-hmm. So that's why it sounds so horrible through a certain lens. And it is like, it's back to that Romeo and Juliet, example that I used a few episodes ago about, like, if you said that there's nothing wrong with Romeo and Juliet and you're talking about it as like a play critique, and like, it's perfect, there's nothing wrong with it. And then a character in Romeo and Juliet hears that there's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah. The father of Juliet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, there's nothing wrong with it from a click back, where it's all just this.
I think there's a part in your book where you said, let's see, I have it on my phone. You said, when you know you're dreaming, you're free to play whichever games you wish. I think the first time I'd heard something like that, even that sounded like, oh, isn't that cool? What a privileged place to live in. You can do whatever you want. I think we started talking about that word like a couple of years ago, actually, with some friends, and we were talking about that. Like, you're going, Lisa, you're doing what you want. Yeah. And I was like, no, I'm not. There's all these things I have to do, and we have kids, and what I want to do is not take care of the house or do the laundry or pay bills. And I don't want to worry, but someone has to worry about blah, 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 blah to make the practicalities of life. So it feels like a lofty, super privileged statement that took me a long time to understand. And then when I finally got it, I didn't know what game I wanted to play. Like, when there's all these have-tos and there's your whole life is programmed and filled with like the purpose-driven. I didn't read The Purpose-Driven Life, but
you're a bad Christian.
I knew The Purpose-Driven Life, but there was, even though I didn't read the book, I think I didn't have to. I knew what my purpose was, and that drove so much of my life. And then once that was cut off, I kind of felt like oh shit. I found great purpose in, helping build beds for kids in orphanages and teaching music classes for them, or providing a church for people so they could feel like they belonged. Like, for me, there was all this giving I was doing. The purpose of my life, I think that there was a scripture. Is this scripture? Is this the Bible? Without vision, the people will perish.
Yeah.
Oh man, and that was like in me. And so when I could see it was all a dream, I felt like for a little while I lost any. I didn't know what it was. What's the game you want to play? What the fuck? I don't know. Anything can happen. I can do anything. It was almost like I felt overwhelmed. the option of what could be. And so then I went for a little bit. I felt like I was totally stuck, and I didn't do anything. But then it was, I think I'll go ahead and respond to that if you want to.
It's funny, the feeling of opening suddenly finds a really clever way of constricting back by saying, oh, anything's possible? What? No, nothing is happening.
Yeah.
And nothing is possible. Nothing is going to happen other than what is.
Yeah.
So it's never what is just what is. And then as it happens, that's how it's being experienced now. And so the freedom of saying, what do you want? It's like anything. It's only free until you really, if you go all the way with it, it suddenly loses. It loops back on itself and contradicts itself. Like you can't go all the way with any idea and not eventually see the absurdity of ideas.
Yeah.
So go all the way into do what you want. The beginning of that is a lovely, for me, was a lovely opening of oh, I don't have to clamp down in fear and worry about what I'm going to do. It doesn't have to be something. I don't have to make the right decision. There's an opening to that. And then a really clever way that the ego gets in there, is okay, so what am I going to do? I, little separate me, what am I going to choose out of all these possible thises that are not this? That is the ego. That's what it does. It's ooh, this could not be this. And so it becomes a seeker of that which is not. It's oneness looking for some other oneness. And so the phrase he's saying you can do whatever you want is only helpful until it's not, or vice versa. But for me, if I would say something like that, you can do whatever you're doing whatever you want. All this is desire. Life is suffering. From the Buddha, I think that it's all desire. The universe is desire. It's movement towards, out of itself into a yin yang, out of stillness, out of nothing, out of void into form. And that move is the move of desire. It is the move of suffering. And the more constricted it gets, the more acute the suffering gets. And so you doing what you want, that's what's happening. You, the I am, is manifesting a universe, is being a flower and a tree and a guy looking at the flower and the tree. And the thought, wondering, who is this guy looking at the flower and the tree? But it's all desire. And so what happens is a lot of times we feel like we're living for some higher good. So I'm not doing what I want. I am serving the poor. So I am a better ego than you. But what's actually happening is that ego thinks that serving the poor is going to make it a better ego. And that will make it happy. So it does what it wants and serves the poor.
Yeah, it's interesting. I liked that. I mean, I liked the whole book. But most of my life has been so social justice oriented that really helped me. There used to be a lot of tension, for me. I have to do this thing for these people, and don't you all see these kids over here? The problems of the world were so overwhelming. And then, and then if you feed these kids, what about these kids? What about this problem? Oh, and then nobody's talking about this problem. And I felt so stressed out and so much tension in the body. And now it's just overflowing love and a beauty that is just the flow. I'm in the flow and I don't feel the tension or the have to. It's the want to. This is Bob and Court, two people. Bob and Court.
Bob and Court, first thing I would like to recommend is that you get separate Twitter addresses.
Why?
Sharing your bank account is one thing.
But Twitter account, don't
But
tell them
Twitter
what to
account,
do.
Because who am I talking to?
Who are you?
Bob and Court?
They're one already. They don't care if they have the same Twitter account.
But what am I supposed to say to them as a?
You're talking to them already. You're talking to the
I'm
one
just saying,
already.
like, imagine I know
Give
Bob
and Court a
Imagine
break.
I know Bob and Court. All right,
Okay.
what am I going to tweet to them? That's a real specific message.
So are you your answer to Court would be different if it was you want to know, am I talking to Court or to Bob?
Yeah.
Because your answer would be different.
Maybe. Not in this podcast because I have no idea who they are. And now they don't listen to this podcast anymore because we've been teasing them for having the same Twitter. But
You've been teasing, correction.
I would like
I'm
to bring you into
congratulating.
it because you have more social capital with most people than I do.
Wait, you'd like to what? 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 Because I
I'd
have more
like you
social...
bring you into it. Because people will like you.
Got it. Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
I mean,
It was
it's
just
true.
me.
Historically, I've been more likable.
It's true. It's because I do things like this
You're a more likable person now, though.
than I used to be. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
You were always likable to a
It's
degree.
like kind of a backhanded compliment.
I think people like you more now than they like me. I think it's the tables have turned.
You are less of an asshole than you were the rest of your life.
I'm just leaning back on the keyboard and enjoying that one. Thank
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I'm so glad.
I actually am not anything but glad about it.
Yeah, I know.
I was an asshole.
Yeah. You were. So, little bit lighter question, but maybe it's not. You could take it. It's what is light? What is deep?
Okay.
Favorite sexual position?
I was just going to say...
That's not in there. Nobody asked that, but I want to know. I already know.
I like the naked ones.
The ones where you're naked. I love that.
The one where I'm in proximity to you. Those are nice.
Yeah, I like that too. Someone asked where, I like this question because it wasn't like what was your favorite part of the book to write, but where was your favorite spot to write? Where?
I was trying to do some throat singing with it. Didn't really work very well. Where...
It didn't work. Let me try again.
Oh, it kind of had it almost.
That's where, did you hear that resonance?
Yeah, I did.
And the overtones? Oh. I
That's why
love
they
my
call it
nasal
Isa.
cavities.
What?
And that's why they call me
What was the
Isa.
question again?
The throat singing, that's what. And that's
Where do I
why.
write my book?
No, where was your favorite spot?
Yeah. Oh. I don't know if I had one. Oh, I wrote on the beach a couple times. That was nice. Here's what I found when I write a book. I do interact with the environment energetically in some way, I feel like. So what happens is I often get it, like writing in a space, and then when I feel the juice start wearing out of that place, then I move somewhere else.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't do that, but like, so if I'm sitting in the house writing on the couch, the juice starts wearing off, then I'll go sit in the backyard or go to a park, or I don't know. I wrote in a lot of different places, including the elliptical machine and all those things that I was put all those on there. A couple of those were a little gimmicky.
I was just gonna say, like, I liked the gimmick. It worked for me.
Thanks.
The audiobook. I liked the audiobook thing when you're like recorded your voice on the elliptical.
Thanks.
And all the different
that
places.
Was definitely gimmicky because I wasn't recording my audiobook on the elliptical machine.
Thanks.
But I was honest. Wait, was I not? I feel like I was going to try to go record it with my phone at each place, but I may have cheated at the end.
Which one did you cheat at?
I think I may have like inserted sound effects for some of them. There
was one where you whispered. Was it a library or bookstore and you weren't actually there and you just whispered into a phone? We don't want to know.
We're gonna just don't ask. Don't ask.
We want to believe it's real. We want to believe
don't
the
ask,
story.
Don't tell. You know, those were the best. Those were the good old days. Don't ask, don't tell.
Oh, the good old days.
The good old days when we used to not let women vote.
Yeah, where you just women would just get sexually assaulted and not be able to tell anyone about it.
Oh, you just took the joke a little too far.
The good old days. Those good old days. Far. I mean, I'm obviously against that. It's a sarcastic joke, but I see your point. Oh, the good old days when you could just when rape was sexy in the movies on Blade Runner. She's like, no,
it was a little
no. He's like, yeah, I'm forcing the door closed.
Definitely pre-Me Too.
Yeah, pre-Me Too. Whew, boy.
premetoo.com/Charlotte's Web
/ the good old days /
biz
this podcast. But is unsearchable, so he's changing the name / loving this podcast.
Loving this podcast. And if even that remains too generic, loving this podcast from Los Angeles, California, with Michael Gungor, VishnuDas.com /biz
/ deadass.
I don't know how we haven't lost everyone? Segment at some point in the show. Like, I don't know about this show. For every possible person.
No, it can't be. It can't be so. Oh. Oh no.
I hope not. I hope there's a few of you listening still.
I hope that too. I'm looking. Do we need more questions?
No, we've been talking a long time.
It's been a while. Okay. I think
we can do something else another day. If you like this, can you be like a few thousand more people and listen to it?
Asking for listeners. The end of this podcast, you're just going to the ask.
I'm just speaking to you, the capital U.
Can you?
If you want me to keep making this fucking podcast, I'm going to need more than 200 people to listen to it.
But why do you need that?
I don't.
You don't need it.
I don't need that.
You don't need that.
Joke. I took the joke too far.
You know what you did? You took the joke too far.
Yeah, I actually just enjoy making it because it's really ridiculous.
You don't need anyone to listen.
I've got one podcast that has millions.
Oh, can I tell you how much my other podcast has? I'll send you the stats.
This one has tens of listeners.
Tens.
Tens with a Z. Maybe if I make it searchable.
Are all the listeners our friends? Like, they're probably not even. I guess they're not our friends. Our friends don't care.
Well,
But
you're here
that's
for the
fun.
big teaching, guys. And the big teaching
Is nothing.
is nothing.
If you're tuning in to Loving This with Michael Gungor, you're going to hear a lot about nothing.
If you really want to hear about nothing, go join an awakening session at awakeningsessions.com.
Or go take a poo. Either one.
Either one is really fine. I make more money if you go to awakeningsessions.com.
That's true.
But I have nothing to teach you that if you're really paying attention, taking a poo could also teach you. It's right there for you. But if you want to pay me to point at the poo,
to tell you about
the
the nothingness of the poo.
I have nothing to tell you about it. Worst salesman of all time. Well, yeah, I have no interest in selling you anything. But it actually has
Except Charlotte's Web.
Except Charlotte's Web, which you can find at charlottesweb.com. Again, that web address is probably not correct.
It's not correct. We're not
I
actually
might
selling
actually
something.
ask them for a sponsorship because...
We've said it so many times.
Yeah,
And we like it.
I
You feeling
really
great?
feel nice.
Nice.
Has this been a coherent podcast? If not, you can blame charlottesweb.com.
What is charlottesweb.com? Poor
It's probably the
charlottesweb.com.
book.
It probably is.
It's CBA, CBD, ABC, CDE, DBDIs.
Oh my gosh. It's just falling apart. It's falling
It's
apart
falling
now.
apart. It's entropy. It's God going back
It's
to
how
herself.
everything happens. Oh.
It's form moving back to its source. Void, which is also the source of form, because they're the one and the same. CBD
And now
oil dot Charlotte's Web /biz dot Michael Gungor's new podcast that needs a more specific name. dot romance.
/ we did it last night. Everyone hates us.